synthetic phonics really the best way to teach children to read? Have its supporters won the reading wars? That's our talking point.
If I can explain, research is difficult. You have to research the research and look into it very detail. We need to look at the detail. And what she's pointing out is that the Torgerson-Brooks-Hall research is not comparing like with like. And so they're trying to make a sweeping statement about synthetic phonics, but they're using studies which are very varied. So it might be one-to-one tutoring. There are the classroom studies, because we are in the argument about what should we do in classrooms. The classroom studies are very, very clear that synthetic phonics is the best by far.
Sorry, I have to answer that. No, there are 20 randomly controlled trials. These are phonics instruction studies. I've just finished 3 months analysing this, and I've actually looked at every single study in this report that you're talking about from the DFES. They are classroom studies, actually. And they're quite clear that in a very rigorous methodology they've used, they've only allowed randomly controlled trials. There is no difference between analytic and synthetic phonics approaches. And frankly, that's one of the most detailed cases ever put on the basis of research. And I stand by that much more than anecdotal evidence.
Katie, what advice would you give to the DFES or to Jim Rose if you were given the opportunity?
Oh, well, I would ask him to, first of all, come into a reception class and spend more than just 20 minutes in there and actually see what teachers are having to do, because teachers want to do what's best for the children.
Because we have two enthusiasts here.
Yes.
So what are your...
I think phonics has got certainly a place in teaching children to read, along with any other method that works for the individual child. And many children, before they hit year one, are too young. They're not ready for some of the teaching that teachers are having or being told to deliver.
Do you agree?
Well, I think we have to be really careful about what we mean by like other methods. I mean, having come from what I used to describe myself as an eclectic teacher of reading,
yes.
And I would do some phonics, and I do a little bit of look and say, and I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I did it all with masses of enthusiasm. You know, I was always quite full on. But I think, you know, what do we mean by all those other methods? And I know that, if, you know, from all of the youngest children, if they can be equipped with basic, I mean, if we're just taking some of these letters here, that they do actually know the 44 sounds and they can respond to these really quickly. We're talking about 20 minutes a day playing with letters, so they actually do know the letters. They can make these letters into words.
I'm not disputing the phonic teaching. I'm saying that some children are too young, and that taking this into reception classes is, I don't think, is a good idea.
Katie, can I ask you, would you, because it is a problem for me as well. I reckon in every reception class there's 2 or 3 children who find it hard, whatever system you use. Now, my problem is those 3 children will get...
There are probably more than 2 or 3, in my experience.
OK, well,
yes.
Well, say like 2 or 3. Well, in my experience, I've come across 2 or 3 each time. I know that within a term, with intensive one-to-one teaching, I can get those children to do some basic sound blending, and I know I can get them there. But the point...
But why do they need to be there so young?
No, my question to you is, just say that we didn't do it with those 3 children, because I'm always grappling with this myself. If you didn't do it with those 3 children, do you mean that you don't think it's right to do it with the rest, all those 3, or those 5 in your case?
I think...
That's an issue, isn't it?
It is, but I think we're still doing it too young. There are some children in the reception class that I teach in that had no problems with reading and are ready for comprehension work, discussion, talking about books, reading stories, and are fine and actually don't have a problem with the phonics. There are some children for whom phonics is very useful because it gives them a key into reading straight away, and they get the esteem from being able to, the self-esteem builds from being able to read, you know, a couple of pages in a book or some of the simple reading scheme books. And there are some children who are just switched off. They don't want to sit there on the carpet and listen. They don't want to, you know, point to the letters. They're still struggling. I mean, it's the same kind of issue as writing, I think. I mean, how can you ask a child to write their name if they can't actually hold their own weight on a climbing frame?
Well, that does suggest that perhaps teachers are being too prescriptive in the way they're teaching it. I mean, one of Zaber's witnesses said it leads to a robotic form of teaching. Is that because it's not being properly taught?
Can I just explain then? I think it's really important to say what synthetic phonics is and isn't, and how it compares with what's going on already. First of all, synthetic phonics is incredibly easy. we have got a very complex writing system, which is why in English-speaking countries there's so much difficulty, so much illiteracy, so much so-called dyslexia. Synthetic phonics starts with what works, and instead of using a variety of methods, it's saying, here is the alphabetic code. We're going to start from the simplest way of doing it. Now, analytic phonics starts with some pretty tricky words which are taught as shapes. Here are some flashcards, and we're going to teach you that these shapes are these words. And straight away we cause failure for children. We also say, right, here are some letters, let's give them their names, let's give them the sounds. So we give them double information about the letter shapes.
But
and
one of the early learning goals is to say the name and the sound.
Well, yes, and this is why
this
is why we need to look at the details. And you know, I really feel very sorry that people are rubbishing the arguments and the debates. What happens is that only certain people are debating, and we need to take that debate to ordinary teachers who are actually doing the doing. And that's where my interest and my passion is, and why I'm here to support this programme today.
Other critics suggest that predicting or inferring or problem solving is not helped by synthetic phonics. Am I right?
I think prediction and inferring is a very important part of the reading process. In terms of the debate about phonics, it's certainly true that children do need to know how to decode, and they have to be taught how to decode. They need to be taught the phonemes. But they do also need to use knowledge of context in the end, because if you take my example I like is the word R-E-A-D. Now, in one sentence that's read, in another sentence it's read, and it's highlighted, I think, most amusingly in the Centre for Reading in Reading. So that phoneme right in the middle of that word changes according to the context, and that's the case, as we all know, for lots of words. So context is really important, and I think there is a danger.
After they can read it, though, Dominic,
Yes.
they've actually read the word. Say the child comes across the word, and they've read, and they put in read instead of read or read instead of read. They will self-correct because of the context. Now, what?
It's not a simple linear development.
No, it
actually,
isn't.
it's not before and after. That question has not been answered.
No.
No.
However, the government is powering on with this, and as Nick Gibbs suggested in that film, there seems to be a cross-party consensual view that synthetic phonics is the way ahead. Indeed, the Education Secretary presumably would not have said what she has recently said if she didn't expect the interim report would talk up synthetic phonics in the way that I think Ruth and Debbie approve of, and the way that I know you and Katie are very resistant of. However, it does suggest that you've lost this battle.
No, certainly not. And it really does need teachers and parents to stand up and say, no, we will not have more prescription, and we won't have prescription on the basis of a lack of evidence. And I think the Rose Report needs to step back and frankly needs to present a balanced and appropriate way forward. It ties into a number of initiatives that government are involved in education. The review of the literacy strategy is being done over hastily, and the Rose Inquiry is being done over hastily.
Yes.
Let's please have some measured
Yes.
debate and a long-term
I'd like to hear from Ruth, because we haven't heard from her for a while. Does your approach suggest that teachers can't be trusted to teach as they see fit in the classroom they're in?
I think it's really hard because teachers have all come through some teacher training establishment. And it's what we've all got such a mixed range of knowledge about teaching reading. I mean, I've come through since I was trained from 1977, and I have been through so many different methods of teaching reading. And so it depends what we mean by professionalism. It means that at certain times in my career, I have learnt something new which has helped me teach better. So now, when I actually discovered, through lots of other people, that actually teaching children to read through a very simple method, it's really fun. Please don't think that phonics is dull and boring. Can we talk really effectively, really quickly? If you knew that would work, and it did work for me, you're going to grasp it with both hands. However, if I say Dominic was teaching now, and I said to Dominic, look, Dominic, this synthetic phonics really does work. I'm telling you, from the government, you are going to do it as from Monday. The thing is, Dominic wouldn't want to do it.
Are you talking about Dominic, or are you talking about the teaching
I'm talking about the
professional?
teacher. I'm talking about him in this example, though, because everything's individualised in the end. And saying to Katie, what this government's got to be very careful about is actually telling people what they've got to be. They've got to be convinced to want to do it, because nothing works if you... Look, none of this synthetic phonics, no phonics will actually work unless you put your heart and soul into it, and it's actually going to be effective and you believe it is. Now, I know it works, and all the teachers I work with know it works, but we're converts to this. We get fantastic success from it. But, it's we've got to win hearts and minds, as well as a government just telling people, you know, you've got to do it, because for the last 10 years, teachers have been told time and time again, do this, do this, do this. And they keep saying, yes, we'll do this, yes, we'll do this. But teachers are actually fed up, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
Of actually being told. So here we've got, I think, a fantastic opportunity now to make a massive difference. And what scares me is that teachers might not want to do it, and their heads might not want to do it.
That suggests the national literacy strategy is a mistake.
It is, and can I explain why? First of all, I find it extraordinary that Dominic is talking about a lack of evidence. Now, the whole point of the debate about synthetic phonics, it's been brought through evidence, and that's through research evidence and through classroom findings. And it's been so, the National Literacy Strategy has been so strongly challenged because there was no evidence with which to push forwards the National Literacy Strategy. Now, phonics is not new. Phonics is extremely old, and research is really quite old as well. And so people who've pushed forward for synthetic phonics have been challenging the government for having a total lack of testing of the programmes. Now, the reason that phonics has now been agreed across parties is because behind the scenes, over the last few years, there has been an increasing amount of phonics. But when the National Literacy Strategy framework was drawn up, phonics was a pathetic amount spread over 3 years, and there was so much criticism. They brought in a phonics programme. That phonics programme was a very weak phonics programme.
Well, it's not been tested, so it's not been evaluated.
It has not been
I presume you
evaluated.
mean progression in phonics.
Exactly.
Not
and
been
so
evaluated.
what happened was, behind the scenes, we evidence-based people, let's not even call us synthetic phonics people, let's call us evidence-based people, have been challenging and challenging and challenging, and we've called upon old research and we've called upon new research. But what we've also done, Dominic, is looked at the detail of what the National Literacy Strategy was actually promoting. And what it's been promoting is what's called balanced literacy or mixed methods, which includes a lot of methods called whole language, which has absolutely been shown by research to fail children. And can I just say, just to finish this off, that what's very important is that where you're talking about you need context and you need other things, and you've talked about other methods, actually the dominant methods for reading strategies amounts to guessing from pictures, guessing from the first letter, and sort of guessing from the context. Now, when it's guessing words, that's
Dominic,
not acceptable.
Yes. That sounds as if the National Literacy Strategy is up your street.
Well, I was beginning to agree with you when you started talking about the difficulty in applying evidence to the literacy strategy, and that's been the basis of my work over a number of years, questioning the claim that the literacy strategy is informed by evidence. However, the evidence supporting phonics is not as straightforward as you suggest.
We're going to have to close. So I'm wondering if you can all agree on one thing. Katie suggested that Stuart Rose should go back to reception classes. Jim Rose, I beg your pardon, not Stuart Rose. Jim Rose, are you confident that this report is going to be received with happiness?
No, and I think the one thing we might...
You would
sorry,
say
I beg your
no.
pardon.
What would you
I
say?
think it's contradictory. On the one hand, they're saying you must do this. On the other hand, they're saying individual learning, and I'm not sure the two match up.
Ruth?
Well, I'm hoping if the final report is like the interim report, I'm going to welcome it with open arms.
And that is where we have to end this talking point. My thanks to all our guests for joining in this debate, Katie Kowalska and Dominic Wise, and Debbie Hebblewhite and Ruth Mishkin. The Rose Report on the teaching of early reading is due out any day now. The primary literacy strategy will kick in September, the new one. The debate, as you've heard, is live and continuous. Talking Point will be back at the end of the month with more debate and argument. Till then, goodbye.